There are so many positive effects of developmentally appropriate teachers and programs that it's just amazing when you look at the research done on children that have both gone through these programs and students that have not been in these programs. And there's a couple of effects that I really want to point out. If you're interested, these are discussed in your textbook on pages 91 to 93, and you get some specific data if you're really interested. But some of the things that we find is when children are in positive teacher-child relationships from a young age, even those children that are babies, we find that later on in life they have a higher academic success, they are more competent socially with their peers and with people that are older and younger than them, and they have fewer behavior problems. And this is interesting because I know I've encountered so many parents that are just so upset that they have to send their child off to daycare. They might want to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, but financially they can't, or for other reasons. And they just worry about their child. But research is showing us when you choose to put your child in a quality, developmentally appropriate center where they are receiving positive relationships from their teachers, it's actually helpful to them. And some children that do not attend daycare or preschool actually have lower academic success, social competence, and more behavior problems if they stayed home with their mothers or their fathers. And it's kind of ironic, but sometimes that interaction that a teacher gives is more quality than what they might get at home, especially if their parents are busy multitasking or taking care of a large family. They're not going to give the child possibly that support all day that they would get in a center. The other effect we see that's positive is when it comes to the kind of teaching practices that teachers are planning and incorporating into their learning. And I'm going to drop to the blue box at the bottom. The most successful early learning environments combine teaching practices that are teacher-directed, where the teacher's in charge and leading, and also child-initiated learning, and that's where the child figures things out. I know in some of our videos that we watched this week, we saw the teacher step back and the child or children allowed to plan or figure things out. Now, sometimes when it comes to child-initiated experiences, we think it's a free-for-all, but it's not. It's where the teacher has set things up. She set up the environment, or he set up the experience and allowed the child to go in and discover and manipulate what's going on, and they feel like they've initiated it, but really we've planned it all out so we get to the part that we want to see as a teacher. But when we have this balance between teacher-led and child-led, that gives us these quality teaching practices that we'll talk about as a positive. Children that have quality teaching practices from a young age scored higher in their language skills, that's their oral speaking, their literacy skills, which is reading and writing, their math abilities, and their ability to stay on task in classrooms or situations where they had to pay attention. And this is as early as the effects of these good teaching practices as babies and toddlers and preschoolers. That shows in kindergartens and first grades and second grades, on up through middle school and even high school. So these research-based statistics follow children longitudinally. That means they take a child and they watch them over the course of several years, and they compare them to their peers. And what we're seeing is developmentally appropriate practices lead to positive outcomes. There's also some research that shows children that are not in these quality environments, whether they're at home in a bad environment or they're in a center that does not have quality developmentally appropriate practices, because unfortunately not all centers are developmentally appropriate. They have lower skills, more behavior problems, and get this, that they end up in jail, incarcerated more as adults. And it stems all the way back from early childhood education. There's so many studies out there that look at quality education in the early years from ages 5 and younger and the effects of that on incarceration as adults. So this is why it is so important that we do reach out and we do have these quality early childhood programs that are research-based and follow the guidelines that are set, because it makes a difference to our community and our nation. And this is why some of the countries that excel have adults with lower crime rates and hold jobs better. They have mandated child preschools starting at very young ages that are free. I know in France it's called the crèche, but many other countries have these mandated preschool programs, and that's because it is good for their country. And we don't have that here in the United States. So the best that we have right now is we have guidelines for centers to follow to get quality programs in place. And so this is really important. We see these effects